myself, my name is Janae Gay. I'm a third year at San Jose State University here. My major is health science, and my minor is political science and African American studies. Clap it up for Janae, and clap it up. And to introduce myself, my name is Drew Wormsley, and I'm a fourth year business management major here at San Jose State. All right, shout out to my fans. We're going to bring in our keynote speaker. This young brother from UC Berkeley, Rasheed Shabazz, is a communication director for the African Black Coalition, a statewide collective of Black students in California. He graduated from UC Berkeley with degrees in African American Studies and Political Science, with a minor of City and Regional Planning. He previously studied at Laney College in Oakland. His research focuses on the history of the Black press, housing and community development, and urban political history. Whew. Go ahead, brother. Especially in California. He has worked as a teacher, journalist, and photographer. He is currently editor-in-chief of the African Black Coalition news publication, the ABC Movement. And he's a pretty cool dude. So let's give him a round of applause. Make some noise.
All right, good afternoon. Hotel. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom. What's happening? I'm just trying to figure out who in the room. I get some response for some of them other things, right? Talk back to me, talk black to me. How y'all doing? All right. So I had the honor of continuing to be the keynote speaker here today, and I'm very grateful for that. But before we start the program, I want to start off with libations, right? And so this is something that many folks do to give honor to ancestors, to give honor to the creator of the universe on which we are all living in right now and a part of. And so I'm going to tell y'all about that. All right, so how many people are familiar with libations? Anybody here do? Okay. All right, so where I'm from, I didn't learn how to do this with water. We use like some other beverages to do the libation. And so I want to show y'all another way to do it. And so when I'm referring to, people pour a little liquor out, right? Y'all know that Tupac song, Pour Out a Little Liquor? Okay, I know some people in here was born after Pac, right? He wasn't even in the universe yet before, Pac was alive. That's real talk. That changed your perspective. So what the libation is about is giving honor to the ancestors. And so we're going to walk through it, and I'm going to first ask for permission from an elder. Is there anybody in here over 50? All right. So my sister right here, do I have permission to continue? Right on. Thank you. All right, so with the libation, we first start off and we give honor to the creator. And the creator is known by many different names, right? Some people say Elohim, we say Allah. Some people say Vishnu, right? Okulu Kulu, right? So at different times, different people have had a different name, right, for the Great Spirit, right, for the creator of all life. I'm going to pour this in here and I'm going to say Ashe, right? And I want you all to say Ashe with me. And Ashe simply just means let it be so, may the words have power, right? So giving honor to the creator. Ashe. And so I want to first give honor to the first human beings on this planet Earth. Those humans who are African, right? The first life beginning in Africa. To those very first Africans from which we all descend. Pour this and say. Ashe. And to our folks from East Africa who migrated up to the Nile Valley, right? Where we got civilizations like Kush and Abyssinia, right? And Nubia. And what some people call Egypt, but we properly call Kemet, right? We give honor to those folks in the Nile Valley, the first civilizations. Of course, to say. Okay. Now I'm going to start off with my ancestral lineage for those Africans who built huge civilizations in West Africa, right? We know places like Mali and Songhai, right? These great dynasties that don't often be in your history books, right? Not often in the curriculums of these schools, right? For those Africans who built, of course, to say. Now recognizing that those Africans, right? My ancestors, many of our ancestors were stolen and kidnapped and brought here. We want to remember them, those who survived the Ma'afa. That's Swahili, it means great tragedy. Right? We want to remember those who survived the Middle Passage and made it across to the Americas. Whether folks went to Barbados, to Brazil, or like my grandfather's family, they went to South Carolina. And some of the others on my mother's side, they went to Louisiana. Right? Reports for those who made it across and say. For those who survived the enslavement here in America, who had to work from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. For those who ran away. For those ancestors who continue to push forward for freedom. Reports to say. For those who migrated west on that great migration, coming to places like California, right? My family came here and worked in the shipyards in Richmond and Oakland, for this and say. And for those who survived colonialism on the African continent, whether you were in West Africa and Nigeria, right, or surviving Italian colonialism in Abyssinia or in Ethiopia, right? Before this and say. And I want to give space for those of you who may have lost someone recently, or someone who you would want to be in the space, right? It may be a grandparent, it may be a parent. Say their names.
Ray Mohammed.
Ashe. Ashe.
IDG Well.
Ashe. Say it louder. Please, say their name. Ashe.
Terry Collins.
Ashe. Nala Jacobs.
Grandpa.
Ashe. Oscar Grant.
Trayvon Martin.
Ashe.
Philip Watkins.
Say them. Say their names.
Mike Brown.
Kelly Bryant.
Last one. Say bring who you want to bring in the space. Repeat. All right. Ashe. And now for this last one, for all of those whose names we haven't said, but also our descendants, right? Those who will come after us, who we will want to one day be in a place like this and to remember us, that they will not forget us. Report 3 times and say Ashe. And so it is. All right. But libation is really important because our ancestors matter, right? Our culture matters. Our history matters. And too often we're told that it doesn't. So it's important to remember our ancestors because these folks prayed for us. When I think about my ancestors who were enslaved, I think that one day they may have been praying for me, right? That one day I will be in this room having this conversation with you about remembering them, right? Folks that sacrificed for us and died for us to be here today. And so a lot of times we forget that, and that's why it's important to have programs like that. You see many of these faces. Many of these are folks that have passed away, right, on this flyer. And some, Brother Malcolm was assassinated. Brother Martin, assassinated, right? And so we cannot forget those martyrs, those who fought for our freedom. Long, long time ago, these folks have been saying Black Lives Matter, right? Y'all know who Nat Turner is? Nat Turner led a rebellion, right, in the 1800s. Right, so when he was out there in the woods, plotting, trying to make sure his folks could be free, he was saying Black Lives Matter, right? Mama Yaa Asantewaa. For folks don't know, this is a sister in West Africa with the Asante people. When the British colonized, they had this golden stool. This golden stool was part of the legacy, the history, right? And when all the men were so scared, right, we used to say had their tails between their legs. Right? She said, if y'all won't fight, I will get the women and defend the stool. We will not give it away. And so she took an army of 5,000 to fight the British, called the War of the Golden Stool. Right? Back then, she said Black Lives Matter. Right? Ida B. Wells was a journalist who fought against lynching. She crusaded to make sure that we destroyed the myth. We busted this myth that lynching was caused by black men raping white women. Right? Back then, she said black families matter. Black people matter, and many more. My brother Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, right? When you think about Marcus Garvey with this red, black, and green that we have on this flyer, right? He said black pride matters. Malcolm X standing with that rifle by the window. Y'all know this image, right? Protecting his family, saying my family matters. And so what we see today with many of these protests is just a continuation of this ongoing struggle. And so it's so important that we start off by remembering the ancestors. My talk today is called Black History Matters, right? It's Black History Month. Give it up for Black History Month one time. And I think it's really important that we still have Black History Month Because some folks will say, oh man, y'all got a black president. What you need Black History Month for? Right? And some other folks get kind of mad about Black history. Like, why we gotta, like they got over us on us again. Like, oh man, how we get the shortest month out the year? Only 28 days? Anybody ever think that before? Maybe I'm just thinking out loud. Okay, you ain't feeling me. But I know initially I was like, man, how Black History Month gonna be the shortest month of the year? Right? But then I went to do the research on the history and found out why that came to be. And so Carter G. Woodson, go to this brother right here. Carter G. Woodson started what was then called Negro History Week in 1926. And Carter G. Woodson was a historian, a writer, an educator, right? And at that time, very similar to today, black people were not reflected in the curriculum. We weren't in the textbooks, we weren't taught about or talked about, right? Unless it had to deal with slavery. And so he started Negro History Week in order to have a space for us to learn more about our history and to teach others about this great history that we have, right? And I say that, I want to start off with that because it was just like a little over a year and a half ago that somebody in the Spartan Daily wrote an article talking about black history wasn't relevant, right? And so people will easily say that today. They'll say, nah, we don't need no black history, but we can talk about everybody else. You got people around this campus that's not black that call each other ratchet, call each other niggas, but can't say Black Lives Matter, right? So it's really important that we know our history, and we can, it's important for other folks to know our history as well, because I think they won't be acting some of the ways they act. But it's so important for us to know this history so we can check folks when they say dumb stuff like that. So I want to quote Carter G. Woodson. He said that if a race has no history, if no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. Extermination. Right? So when we live in a time where every 28 hours, right, a black man or woman or child is murdered by police, security guards, or vigilantes, right, with no consequences. We have to know this history because this is a part of understanding it's a part of a long time extermination process that we've been fighting for so long. And we have to assert our right to live on this earth. And part of that is knowing your history, because so many of us don't know our story, right? We don't think that we actually have any value. And because other people don't think we have any history, they also don't think that we have any value. So again, black history matters. I want to quote another brother. This is one of my favorite historians. I want to quote John Henrik Clarke because I got a degree from UC Berkeley in African American Studies. And John Henrik Clarke wasn't on the curriculum, right? But there's a huge scholar in this field, right? But a lot of times in many of the black studies departments, folks like this are not included. So that's why it's important not only to have black studies departments, but also to do your own research. But Dr. Clarke said, history is often said is a clock that people use to tell their political time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been and what they have been. It also tells of people where they are and what they are. Most importantly, history tells of people where they must go and what they still must be. Right? So if you don't have any idea where you came from, right, you don't know where you at, and you probably don't know where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, well, anywhere is good enough. You might just stand right there, or you might take the wrong route. So I want to start with continue with this clip from Brother Malcolm. This is actually one of my favorite videos. I was watching this on repeat a couple years ago, and finally decided to change my name. I'll talk about that in a second. But one of the things Brother Malcolm said is, of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. I'm going to play this quick clip for y'all.
Mr. O'Connor.
What is your real name?
Malcolm X.
Is that your legal name?
As far as I'm concerned, it's my legal name.
Have you been to court to establish the
I didn't have to go to court to be called Murphy or Jones or Smith. Excuse me for answering you this way.
That's
So
all
if
right.
a Chinese person were to say his name was Patrick Murphy, you would look at him like he's insane, because Murphy is an Irish name. a European name or the name that has a Caucasian or a white background. And a yellow person, Chinese is a yellow man, and he has nothing to do or no connection whatsoever with the name Murphy. And if it doesn't look proper for a person who is yellow or Chinese to be walking around named Murphy or Jones or Johnson or Bunch or Powell, I think it would be just as improper for a black person or the so-called Negro in this country, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to walk around with these names. And therefore he teaches us that during slavery, the same slave master who owned us put his last name on us to denote that we were his property. So when you see a Negro today who's named Johnson, if you go back in his history, you'll find that he was once his grandfather or one of his forefathers was owned by a white man who was named Johnson. His name is Bunch. His grandfather was owned by a white man that was named Bunch.
Would you mind telling me what your father's last name was?
My father didn't know his last name. My father got his last name from his grandfather, and his grandfather got it from his grandfather, who got it from the slave master. The real names of our people were destroyed during slavery.
Was there any line, any point in the genealogy of your family when you did have to use the last name, and if so, what was it?
The last name of my forefathers was taken from them when they were brought to America and made slaves. And then the name of the slave master was given, which we refused. We reject that name today.
You mean you won't even tell me what your father's supposed last name was or gifted last name was?
I never acknowledged it whatsoever.
Like, hell no, I ain't about to tell you the name of the people that stole my folks, right? And denoted us as property. Folks literally stole us, stole our name, stole our language, stole our religion, our history. And many of us walk around with slave names today. Now, I ain't mad if you still got one, because I had it for a long time, right? But we got black folks with the last name White. If that's your last name, I'm just saying, it's ironic. Washington, Jackson, Jefferson, all the folks on the money, right? We got slave master last names and slave master money. Ain't that something? If you offended by that, like, holler at me after. We can have a long conversation. Because I know we'd be attached to it real deeply, right? We got them slave master names. But it's important because then people clown people who make up names, right? Some of the creative urban names, right? But I love those names. Where my sister Zane at? Beautiful name. Keisha's, right? That's almost like Aisha, right? We make some beautiful names up, right? And then, I know we giving the substitute teachers a real hard time, right? Most of my friends, they in Microsoft Word, their names got the little squiggly red line at the bottom, right? I think that's some authenticity about that, though. You know, I can't go to the little rest stop and get the little license plate. That's all right, you know. Name Eliza? No, Alizé. But I think it's important that, recognizing, right, with those young folks, Brother Lynch. I love the brother. I'm going to get to that, but Brother Lynch, right? So it's important that, I want to say one point about the name thing, right? So we'll clown those folks that's doing that, but it's a subconscious way in which people are trying to return to Africa, right? So folks who are taking those names, right, and then you might even ask them, I don't know what it means. Don't it sound African? It sounds cute though, right? All right? It's a beautiful thing in which we're trying to carry on traditions that were taken from us. And so I think it's really important to recognize that history because, we may have came, for those, again, Africans that was stolen and brought here, we might have been Igbo, we might have been Fulani or Hausa, and then we just became a new African people. And part of this developing identity that we have is the selection of our names and our dances. Like you gonna see some dancing today. You gonna see, like, maybe y'all see them turf dancers. Maybe y'all seen them on BART doing their thing, right? Yeah. I swear I've seen people in Egypt and when I was in Aswan and there where the Nubians at, I've seen videos of people in West Africa doing the same dance. Right? So I ain't gonna try to do it on stage and embarrass myself or in my pants, but you don't know, a little drop. Been seen that in Ghana. Right? So I wanna talk about Brother Money Lynch real quick, right? There's a lot of black athletes that's been stepping up in the last few months, stepping up in the sense of speaking out, right, on this ongoing murder of black people, right? So we've seen a lot of athletes wearing the I Can't Breathe shirts. Sisters at Cal, did some moves there as well. There was a first sister though, actually, forgive me, I forgot her name, but she was the first athlete to do this. She was a college student, right? And during the national anthem, she went and kneeled down and put her hands up in front of the flag, right? And after that, all the other athletes started doing stuff, right? So I think it's really important to recognize this sister that did that, took that sacrifice. They tried to suspend her from school, and there was so much outrage, right? And other people got on board and started doing stuff. So I start off to say that because I want to talk about Brother Marshawn. He from the town. Shout out to my real Africans. Right. Shout out to where my real Africans at? That's some real African noise right there. Right on. I was waiting for that one. Right. But you know, one of the things when so y'all know who this is. Marshawn Lynch, NFL Super Bowl player. Shout out to my real Africans. He was doing all these interviews, right? And in these interviews, he would say the same thing. I'm just here so I won't get fined. You already know why I'm here. I'm just here so I won't get fined, right? And they so mad at this brother. Come on, national TV with the stunner shades, dreads, busting them African medallions, right? Like it was 1988. Yeah. Big Daddy Kane was in the house, right? But it's so important to recognize this as resistance, right? Because he knows that mainstream media, or we call white corporate press, is just looking for a negative story that they can put on him, right? He got fined for not talking, or then first he got fined for not talking, then he get fined for talking. It's like you damned if you do, damned if you don't. Him or Richard Sherman, right? And so I just wanted to give a shout out to a real African for doing that right there. But I want to give Salih a shout out because he did a really amazing job, not only with the conference I know a lot of folks went to, but just last night we were in Merced, and we went to Merced and talked to the Black Student Union. They just released these demands, demanding more resources for black students. And so we went there, we hung out with the chair of the BSU, and we met with the former Black Student Union chair. And he let us stay at his house. And when we went in his house, he had a poster on the wall. And of all the iconic images, guess what image this brother had? This brother had Tommy Smith and John Carlos. Mexico, 1968. Black Power salute. Can I get a Black Power salute one time? Woo! It's so important to understand what these young brothers did, right? They were students here at that time, right? Black students on the international stage that took a huge risk and made a huge statement. A silent gesture, as they called it, right? To do something in solidarity. And I point that out because this school, this campus, has a historic role and impact in the black youth movement, in the black freedom struggle, right? And so understanding part of this history, right? I know y'all come to campus, y'all see the colossals out there, right? Those colossal statues, and understand that you can have a huge impact as well. I mean, I don't know if you're an Olympic athlete and run that fast, right? But it's other ways in which, of course, right, you can have a huge impact. I want to emphasize the need for black studies, right? So at this time, when they stood up, there were protests all around the country for black studies, right? Black studies departments. One of my favorite ones is at UC Santa Barbara. I wouldn't recommend doing this, but I'm just going to tell you what they did. They took over North Hall, right, which is one of the buildings on campus, and the chancellor tried to sneak in, tried to climb in the window, and somebody, I don't know who, hit him with a fire extinguisher. So, I'm sorry, they didn't hit him with the fire extinguisher. Somehow the chancellor got sprayed with some fire extinguisher spray. Folks were so serious about what they were involved in, and I think a lot of times today, we don't take ourselves as serious. We don't take ourselves as serious as we should, because folks have the opportunity to make a huge impact. Again, these folks right here made a huge impact. Part of the reason why I'm emphasizing on this piece on history is because folks got some real cold ideas about what our actual history is, right? Of the African folks in America. Some people be like, man, y'all ain't got no history. Y'all was slaves, and that's it, right? They won't talk to you about any civilizations in West Africa, like I named a couple of them. right? They want to talk about people bringing civilization to Andalusia, right? Bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages, right? When the Moors went to Spain. There's all of this history that we often don't know as well, and it negatively impacts how we understand ourselves, right? For folks who don't think that you have any history, you can think very negatively of yourself. And so Brother Malcolm has this quote, and I want to play this for y'all. And he talks about self-hatred. So here it goes.
Why should the black man in America concern himself, since we've been away from the African continent for 400 years, 300 or 400 years? Why should we concern ourselves? What impact does what happened to them have upon us? Number one, first you have to realize that up until 1959, Africa was dominated by the colonial powers, and by the colonial powers of Europe having complete control over Africa, they projected the image of Africa negatively. They projected Africa always in a negative light. Jungles, savages, cannibals, nothing civilized. And naturally it was so negative until it was negative to you and me. And you and I began to hate it. We didn't want anybody to tell us anything about Africa, and much less call us an African. And in hating Africa and hating the African, we ended up even hating ourselves without even realizing it. Because you can't hate the roots of a tree and not hate the tree. You can't hate your origin and not end up hating yourself. You can't hate Africa and not hate yourself.
So it's so important to love your roots and your origin, right, for African people. So y'all know, I guess that's a year ago, young brother got tormented, terrorized in the dormitory on campus. I remember reading about this and I was like, man, how the hell the administration let that happen? How did we let that happen? Right, that there was somebody on this campus, right, that could be terrorized like that. And the thing that came to mind the most, and I'll tell you why I use this image. I don't even know the brother's name, right? Is there anybody that don't know what I'm talking about? Okay, one person. So there was a young brother that was a first-year student here last year and lived in a dormitory with 4 white students. And these folks put a U-lock on his neck, was calling him 3/5, talking about the 3/5 compromise, and Confederate flags hanging up in the room, like all of these cold things, right? I mean, cold is an understatement. It was like freezing, ice cold. It's all bad. And, you know, this person had to deal with this for a long time, and it didn't even come out from the school, right? It came out from outside of the school. And I think about, how does something like that happen to somebody? And I later found out this person wasn't really connected with a lot of people. And oftentimes, we'd be on these campuses and we're not connected. We don't feel connected, and we go through all sort of trauma and drama. I haven't been to San Jose in a long time, because when I was growing up, we used to come to little clubs down here, and the police was way out of line all the time. And I heard it ain't got too much better, right? And so I just imagine, what are people dealing with on campus? What type of harassment is sisters experiencing on campus, whether it's blatant or whether it's more subtle, right? What kind of disrespect do we face on this campus? Sometimes we get it from each other, right? And so I wanted to, just to transition, because I'm gonna wrap up, but of course it's the iconic imagery, and this is Zane here, and just to emphasize that if we want anything on this campus, right, in our communities, it's gonna be on us to do it. We can't depend on other people to save us. We're our own liberators, as Jalil Muttaqin, he's a political prisoner, he said. We are our own liberators, right? So whether it's black studies, you want to have that. You want black theme housing, so people like this young man won't get harassed and threatened with their life, right? But I think more importantly, or just as important as the institutional changes that need to happen, some of our interpersonal dealings with each other have to change. Because I know so much, like I talked about other non-black folks calling us ratchet. We be going around calling each other that, right? And what does ratchet mean? It means like you acting like a poor black woman, right? Or someone that's effeminate. What is that supposed to actually mean, right? And we use these things with each other and get mad when somebody else asks us if we know how to twerk, right? So I think it's really important. And so that probably didn't happen to some of y'all. That's the stories folks be telling me. So I just want to emphasize, like, we have to almost fight to love each other.
because we've been fed so much nonsense about ourselves, and oftentimes we feed this to others. And so that's why I emphasize the need to know Black history. So I'm gonna wrap up. Is my parting words, thinking about everything that's going on with this Black Lives Matter, with all the protests that's happening. It's not so much that we need to convince other people that our lives matter. We need to be convinced that our own lives matter. Many of us are not convinced that we matter, that we have impact, that we're important, that we have a place on this earth. And you do. You do. I can't emphasize that enough, right? It's some reason that you're here today, and it might not be to hear Rasheed go on and on and on. It might be for you to meet somebody and stay connected, right? So that if something like that was happening in your dorm, right, it wouldn't go down like that. If something is going down like that, that's my email right there, but I can give you my phone number. Call me. I'll be on Bar Caltrain Drive, whatever, and be down here. If it ain't nobody else here that'll do that for you. I might even use, brother, can I use that skateboard if I gotta come back? He gave me the black power fist. He with it, right? But my real point is like, yo, we really have to look out for each other. This stuff is happening on all of these campuses, and it's in all of our different communities. And we have the examples of people standing up. So I was born in Oakland, and that's where the Black Panther Party started. And so with the police brutality that happens, they had a solution in 1966. The Black Panther Party for self-defense. Point number 7, we demand an end to police brutality. Them brothers learned the law, and they also armed themselves and formed like a rifle club. And so I ain't saying do that. You might just want to go low-key and learn some jujitsu, aikido. I don't know all of those things, but I know some people that do, and you can do that too, right? But it's so important that we love and protect each other. There's this call that folks do. My brother Salih did it yesterday. I'm actually not gonna chant it. But it's from a Sister Asada. Actually, you know what? I want to chant that because we need that, that call and response. So this is from Sister Asada, right, in her autobiography, and the words are, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love and protect each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains." Right? So that ain't nothing too crazy, y'all wouldn't mind saying along with me, right? So say it after me. It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and protect each other.
We must love and protect each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and protect each other.
We must love and protect each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Say it with your chest. It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and protect each other.
We must love and protect each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
All right, so before I leave, I just want to say, y'all was saying that with each other, right? It's your duty to protect each other, to have each other's back. You see somebody that you know that you love, you really got love for, and they having a hard time, take a little time to holler at them. Give them a smile, give them a hug. Those little things matter. Now, if it escalates, holler at me and Salih, and we got you. All right, thank y'all. Peace.